They all are built to a different kind of plan. And what should have happened over evolutionary time is the number of different phyla, body plans, should have cumulatively increased over time. That's what that first graph is showing you there, a cumulative increase in the number of phyla. But the next slide shows us what we actually find in the fossil record. Almost all the known phyla appear right at the beginning of the fossil record. And the little sort of blip that you see right at the far right side, those are actually organisms that live today, but we don't actually have any fossil record, so we don't know when they would have first shown up in the record if they had a fossil record. Yeah. So what you see there is that the origin of these basically different body plans completely contradicts the evolutionary expectation.
Perhaps we should clarify as well, when we say beginning of the fossil record, we're using the evolutionary terms there. We're meaning the deepest rocks,
the lowest rocks that contain abundant fossils.
Yeah. Every basic body plan is there from the start, pretty much. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we dealt with theistic evolution, and we've mentioned the origin of man. Let's talk in a bit more detail about the origin of man. Why is it that people think that apes evolved into people? Maybe it be a simple question. What is it about some ancient apes that lead people into that line of thinking, Phil? Australopithecine, for example.
I think for one reason, if you don't accept that we are made in God's image, if you want a reason, I'll be blunt, if you want a reason not to believe that we're made in God's image, you need an alternative.
Yep.
And to say that we gradually evolved is the only alternative that really is on offer in secular Western culture, popularised, of course, by Darwin. And although it's been a very dubious history, paleoanthropology, the study of ancient man, there have been a number of contenders that have come and gone, such as Piltdown Man in this country, which most people will have heard of and was a hoax that lasted for best part of 50 years until it was debunked in the 1953.
Just tell us very quickly, what was the hoax? It
was basically the jaw of an orangutan and the skull of a human that had been put together as if they were part of one creature, cleverly stained with potassium dichromate.
So it's a deliberate hoax that the scientists have been conned by for how long were they?
40 years.
40 years, yeah. But there have been other, I'm not saying that the majority of what we find is hoaxes, but there have been a number of other things that people think are contenders for missing links, or it would be true to say actually a lot of the experts don't use the term missing link, but hominid, meaning anything that's ape, human, or a creature that would be put in that category of ape on the way to becoming human. They're called hominids scientifically. And what the public don't realise is that actually vast numbers of those, the majority of those, are based on very fragmentary evidence. Because and we've got to get past the interpretations, which are often the pictures or the reconstructions, and look at actually what was found.
Okay.
And it's much less impressive when you look at what was found.
Yeah. And what is actually found is very much a case of, there are a few grey areas, but very much a case of either apes or they're human. Yeah. And the intermediaries just don't.
Well, one very distinct feature which clarifies this is the labyrinth in the inner ear. It's made out of hard bone, and it's preserved in the fossil.
This is the organ of balance that we have.
It's the organ of balance. Yeah. It's got big canals at right angles to one another, and inside there you've got fluid and little hairs. And if you were to spin round on your office chair, for instance, when you stopped, the fluid in those canals would continue to spin, and that's what makes you giddy.
Yep.
Now, because man is upright, the way he walks, then he needs very careful balance. And so his labyrinths are much more complex than an ape's, which walks on all fours. And if you go to the ancient apes, like Australopithecines, like this Lucy, you find that their labyrinth is just like modern apes. And if you go to fossil men like Neanderthal and those other early
Homo erectus,
they've got the same pattern of their ears, their inner ears, as
as we
Homo
have.
sapiens today.
As we have.
And there are no intermediate forms
No.
in the fossil record.
No.
Okay, let's have a look at a few pictures of Australopithecines. Australopithecine means southern ape.
Southern
That's where they
ape,
were found in
yeah.
South Africa first off. And here's a slide of the famous Lucy on the left-hand side, proper name AL288-1. And
You think that's what they called her when she was alive?
well, when her mum called her to dinner, that she'd say,
Come in, number AL204.
"Your time's
Yep.
up." That's right. Okay, but they would have said it in Swahili because it was
Yeah,
found
that's
in
true, yeah.
okay, Tanzania or somewhere. So Lucy, if you look at that picture, was taken from the Natural History Museum in London, and she's always mounted in that upright position. The bones are arranged and laid out in such a way that, from a cursory glance, just quickly looking at it, you think, well, that's obviously an upright individual. But in fact, that's a false view of the structure, because in fact the arms are relatively long, the legs are relatively short. If you have a look at those, the femur, for instance, you see how short that is, and the tibia, the lower part of the leg, is very short. So that's actually a long-armed, short-legged individual, and it's deliberately put in that position in the Natural History
the knee
Museum.
joint that they found wasn't found at the same site.
So it's what
Think about 80 metres lower in the strata, and
Yeah.
it found a year earlier, I believe. But
So it's a misrepresentation of what it really is. And if you look closely, well, you don't have to look too closely, there's no foot there. There actually is one toe bone, but there's no foot bones in Lucy. And so people were given this idea that Australopithecines had human-like feet, and they walked upright. By the way, the skull that I showed you was OH5, which is doesn't belong to Lucy. Lucy's got a fragmented skull. If you go back to that original slide there, Ben, could you just for a second? That's it. You see that the actual head of an Australopithecine is very much like a chimpanzee gorilla type of structure. It's nothing like a human head.
But there was a TV program about Lucy in which she appeared. They didn't actually put her in a dress, but she did seem to be very human.
Did she? Okay. Did she talk?
I don't know. Grunt, maybe.
Grunt.
I don't know. But they made her out to be a human. But they haven't got a leg to stand on any more than she had.
Talking of legs, here's a human foot. Notice, remember, Lucy does not have a foot in her skeleton. Here's a human left foot. And you're looking at the foot, the big toe is on your left-hand side. And if you look at that space between the big toe and the index metatarsal there, and there's the big toe pushed out sideways, and there I've ringed a little flat area, and that little flat area called a facet on that bone, that shows categorically that the big toe on that foot was joined solidly to the next toe, which is the index toe. And that's a human foot, and all human feet, the first metatarsal of human feet, have that facet. If you look at a chimpanzee, on the other hand, there's a chimpanzee in the same position, chimpanzee left foot with the big toe pushed out sideways. You see the facet is missing. And so just by looking at those bones, if you knew nothing else, you could show that that foot had a thumb on it. It wasn't a human foot. And if you look at Australopithecines, there's one Australopithecine foot bone system that's been found. It's labelled STW573 from South Africa. It was originally found in 1980 and identified as Australopithecines in the mid-90s. Now, next to that, you've got some footprints and handprints from a chimpanzee, and you can see how the foot of the chimpanzee is very much like a hand. And it was much the same with an Australopithecine. So, in fact, Lucy would have had a thumb on her foot. Now, we know that to be scientifically the case. Australopithecine did not have human-like feet, and yet here in the Walking with Caveman series, you see a human dressed up in a gorilla suit, a furry suit, and you can see the big toe. It's obviously human anyway, but they made no attempt to reconstruct that foot to show it to be an Australopithecine. They made it like a human foot, so that's a misrepresentation. And back to the Natural History Museum in London, you can see there is a model of Lucy, and you can see the feet have got human feet in them. And we know from over 10 years ago, from the STW 573 specimen from South Africa, that Australopithecus did not have those sort of human feet at all.
It might be worth